Anger is always the tipping point, my experience included. All my symptoms disappeared within a year after processing anger. So it's true with every patient that heals, it's always anger is the threshold. It's not the final solution, but if you don't get past that threshold, you can't get to what you want.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 2 of Voices of Peace, Personal Forgiveness, where we will talk about personal stories from our daily lives, and our guests will share their stories of forgiveness, their struggles, the obstacles they faced, and how they overcame them. Along with my co-host, Fred Luskin, we will be talking about forgiveness and at times provide live coaching to help our guests and listeners overcome obstacles to forgiveness and find more peace in their lives. When we carry stress in our bodies, it affects our health. Today, our guest is Dr. David Hanscom, a renowned orthopedic spine surgeon with over 32 years of experience, known for a novel approach to treating chronic pain. You may be wondering what forgiveness has to do with this, and David will explain. Fred, I know that David is a good friend of yours, and perhaps you might want to say a few words to introduce David.
Thank you, Eileen. Hi, David.
Hi, Fred. How you doing?
David and I are good friends, and we've been meeting pretty regularly now for years and talking about definitions and purpose. I told Eileen that I wanted to invite David on our podcast because a couple of things. One, having talked to him for years, there's a personal integrity of wanting to help his patients and wanting to tell the world what he knows is true, even when that is at variance with the world of work that he lived in, or even when what he's saying may go against cultural limitation. Two, and he reads a lot. He's a smart guy. He keeps up on stuff. So he and I have conversations where we can push back at each other and teach each other stuff. But third, and the other reason was he has a personal story. His physical health was a mess, and he turned that around, and dealing with his anger was a big part of what he turned around. And so for me, those are the reasons I invited him on. David, I hope you would start with that first, like your own journey from messed up to not so messed up.
You think I'm normal now, Fred? I'll take that as a compliment. I tried to make a very long story brief. It was a 15-year ordeal with 17 different physical and mental symptoms. And I went in 1990, went from being a fearless spine surgeon. I mean, my attitude was bring it on, you can't hurt me. And people could not. And in retrospect, I did not realize that repressed emotions are actually more damaging than expressed emotions. So I developed migraine headaches, ringing in my ears, skin rashes, burning feet, anxiety, depression, full-blown OCD, probably hit the diagnosis of bipolar. And I somehow managed to stay in practice because I was able to function as a surgeon and physician because my personal life was a mess. It cost me a marriage. I don't think any marriage would have survived what I went through, but I just blew apart. And with those 17 different symptoms, the worst two aspects of it were social isolation and these repetitive, unwanted thoughts, these intrusive thought patterns would not go away. Okay, let me go back to 2003. I've been in this hole for 15 solid years. I had read self-help books. I was doing cognitive behavioral therapy, all of which, by the way, help. It's always a combination of things that works, but there's still something missing. I probably get 70% better just with cognitive behavioral therapy and some other things, but about in 2001, I met my new wife. And to tell you how out of touch I was with my anger, I met my current wife, Babs, and I'm not sure why she married me because my first line to her was, I have ADD, OCD, but I've dealt with my anger issues. That's word for word on our first date. And she thought I was kidding. She found out, unfortunately, that I was not kidding. And by 2002, I was such a mess, I tried committing suicide. I was that far gone. And what drove me into the hole were these repetitive, unwanted thoughts. Go back to 1990 when I had my first panic attack and started to go down the toilet, is that I thought anxiety and anger were psychological issues, but they're actually just alarm signals. When your body senses danger, whether it's real or perceived, your body says danger, the alarm goes off, Every living creature has that alarm. Humans just have a word called anxiety and then anger. So anxiety raises the alarm, you solve it, pain goes away, whatever goes away. If you can't solve it and you're trapped, you kick in dopamine and you have anger. Well, anxiety and anger really fire up the immune system. We call it threat physiology. And under sustained threat physiology, the body breaks down. So your brain itself becomes inflamed, nerve conduction doubles, you consume fuel out of your body, and your body literally breaks down. So after this attempted suicide attempt in 2002, I do not know how I made it through that. But I remember in Mother's Day 2002, I was washing my wife's car, beautiful day in Oakland, and the word victim just fluttered across my mind. And remember, I honestly had thought I dealt with my anger issues. I'd been through counseling, I'd read books, I'd gone to meditation retreats. I really thought I dealt with it. I didn't have a clue that I was angry, not a clue. It's hard to believe in retrospect, but it was true. So the word victim flickered across my brain, and the next 6 months were brutal. Coming face to face with raw anger is not that much fun. I think that's one of the reasons people don't do this. But within a year after that moment, every one of my symptoms disappeared. I've seen hundreds of patients go to symptom-free. Anxiety, depression, bipolar, OCD, by the way, are the same inflammatory response as the other physical symptoms. The thing is, people say, well, how can all your symptoms go away? It must be psychological. Really? Think about it. My stomach goes a mess, feet burning, skin rashes, migraines, everything. Those are real physical symptoms. But when your body's chemistry is off, each organ system is going to respond in its own way. So eventually, the core cause of all these things is sustained threat physiology. So jumping to the end of the story, the body breaks down under constant stress or threat physiology, and it heals in safety. So the entire process took me years and years to learn this, with the final 3 years being understanding how bad these thoughts were, which also fire up threat physiology. So forgiveness, I've seen hundreds of patients heal, maybe upwards of 2,000. Everyone has to process anger and deal with the anger issue, every one of them, which means you have to feel vulnerable, which Fred's taught me about learning how to be vulnerable. Still my own work in progress. Surgeons don't do vulnerability very well, right, Fred?
David, you've gotten better over the years at really explaining your point. You sharpened it. And what you just offered is a really nice primer for human beings. If you don't deal with your anger, your body's going to react and you're going to suffer. And all the denial and bullshit ain't going to help.
The other interesting thing, and as psychologists, we know this, that every thought has a corresponding chemical reaction.
Correct.
And so when you are just ruminating over anger all the time, you're sending off some hormones and chemicals in your body, which has an effect. And it can manifest in migraines, it could manifest in high blood pressure, it can manifest in all kinds of things. We don't realize how powerful our thoughts are and the effect it has on our bodies.
Can I restate that just a little bit?
Sure.
So it's the reaction of the thoughts that's so powerful because the unconscious brain processes about 1 billion bits of information per second. The conscious brain processes between 20 to 40. So trying to control anger and anxiety, which are automatic, hardwired survival reactions, is impossible. So it's like trying to stop an 11,000 horsepower dragster with bicycle handbrakes. It's not going to happen. What consciousness does, it gives us the steering wheel. We can direct and regulate, but you have this massive survival response. It's a gift. We did not have anxiety and anger, we would not be alive, right?
Right.
And then the conscious brain is a relatively new development in the course of human history. So the consciousness gives us the steering wheel. We can regulate, we can redirect, and you're right on target with if you want to think negative thoughts, it fires up a physiology. Except here's a problem. When you suppress negative thoughts, it's even worse. Because suppressed thoughts and emotions have more an effect on your autonomic nervous system than expressed thoughts. So if you think the thoughts is a problem, if you repress the thoughts, it's a problem. So I'll ask you the question, what do you do?
You know, when you and I first met, what struck me was that you were a surgeon and that you were like trying to nudge people not to have surgery. because that wasn't necessarily going to get at what the issue was for many people. And that takes a degree of bravery to go against the zeitgeist and also go against the thing that you earn a living in. And I'm going to ask you, like, where that guts came from.
As you know, I came from a horribly abusive background. It was normalized. I thought this was everybody's experience. So I didn't even know I had an abusive background until I was like 14 years old. That's why anger is normalized, anxiety is normalized. I was wired, I was hyper, I was frustrated, all these different things, but I never used the word anger. But it comes from my own suffering where all my symptoms are gone. I went from surviving to thriving at a level I did not know was possible. I watched hundreds of people go through this process and heal the same way I did. I watched 3 to 5 patients every week in my practice undergo spine surgery on normally aging spines when, again, pain is a physiological state, it's not structural. The success rate of a spine fusion for back pain is about 20%. There's a 40 to 60% chance of making you worse if you operate in the presence of a fired up nervous system, i.e. chronic pain. 40 to 60% chance that chronic pain is a complication of spine surgery. So I was one of the salvage guys. I saw people after 5, 10, 15 operations on their spines before they got to me. It was unbelievable. And of course, with each one, it just got worse and worse and worse. So these people's lives were completely destroyed by unnecessary spine surgery. I was watching dozens of people go to pain-free with minimal resources, no risk, but they not only went pain-free, they just exploded into a different reality. So the term we use for this now it came from Bernie Siegel, called self-induced deep healing, where I finally realized that this framework I put together is not about David Hanscom. And I actually just wrote my blog today, Fred, where I acknowledge you and Stephen Porges and all these scientists on the round table. It's a collective wisdom. This knowledge has been around for millennium.
You mentioned Bernie Siegel. His work, he focused on the inflammation in cancer patients.
That's where this term self-induced deep healing came from. He and I have become good friends. He's 93, so a little bit hard to converse with him at times, but he gave a lecture to our group about a year ago with Brenda Stockdale, who managed his exceptional cancer survivors group. And I kept asking Bernie, well, what are these spontaneous remissions? Because this is stage 4 terminal cancer. They went on to live cancer-free and live a normal life. So he finally just got a little grumpy with me and goes, this is not spontaneous remissions, it's self-induced healing. And the characteristics are you quit looking for answers, you take full responsibility for every aspect of your life, i.e. Fred, anger, you quit blaming anybody, you make real life changes now. Career, marriages, relationships, family, you just live your life on your terms right now. In other words, you take complete control of every aspect of your life, including anger. So again, the same thing happened that I saw for years. So I realized that as I listened to him, listened to Brenda, that what I was seeing in my people in chronic, I don't like to call it chronic pain because it's everything. It's your whole body in fight or flight, cancer, autoimmune disorders. All these things are from sustained threat physiology. So as you calm it down, you can halt the progress of autoimmune disorders. Parkinson's and dementia, cardiovascular disease are all metabolic states. So as you calm down the nervous system and calm down the physiology from threat to safety, the body heals on its own. So very clear that I'm just a messenger. I organize a framework, but this is not the wisdom of David Hanscom. It's the collective wisdom of literally eons of people that thought the same thing.
And you know, years ago when you and I started talking about this, you mentioned the quality of vulnerability before. And that's hard for all of us.
Right.
And even the presentation you give now is very active and trying to be in control and strong. But so much of forgiveness, my world, and you have different terms, is there's also an opening to the fact that we're vulnerable.
Right.
And that we're going to get hurt, and that things may be more powerful than we are, and events may happen, and we can repetitively get angry at it, and that will not end until we make some peace with an essential vulnerability. as human beings.
I've been very influenced by Bernie Siegel's work because when I started my private practice as a psychologist, my dissertation was really looking at the psychological aspects of individuals with cancer. And it became clear to me and to my patients that, and I was working a lot with women with breast cancer, that they had repressed so much anger and it was using up all their energy and resources that they didn't even realize. And that they were so afraid to express their anger or get in touch with it because they were so socialized to be good little girls, good women, all that kind of stuff. And when they finally got in touch with that anger and lost their fear of being vulnerable, there was such a shift in their life and their health. It was just pretty amazing.
That's dead on. That's exactly right. So how this came up again with Bernie's talk was that if you say yes and you mean no, that's a negative prognosis for cancer. My corollary to that is if you say yes, but you want to say no, then just own it. Don't blame the other person, just own it. I said yes, I want to say no. That's fine. Just own it. So it comes down to this taking responsibility. But just for the sake of time, I'd like to jump to the end of the story for a second. So my new book is being released Tuesday, Calm Your Body, Heal Your Mind, because we keep thinking stress is psychological. Is that a fair statement? A lot of people think stress is psychological. It's the stress response that's the problem. Stress is life. You have to negotiate stress to stay alive. So it's the stress response that's the problem, which is physiological. So this word stress is not a psychological construct, it's a physiological state. So your whole body's in fight or flight, is sustained, the body breaks down, and healing occurs as you learn to induce safety physiology. So it turns out thoughts are our reality. It's called cognitive fusion, where you fight with negative thoughts, you become entangled with them, it becomes your identity, and you are your thoughts. So you're trapped by your thoughts, you have fight or flight physiology, you start creating an ego or an identity to protect yourself against all this onslaught of unpleasant thoughts. And so the reason why we don't have repetitive pleasant thoughts is because we don't fight them. Plus, your body's on the alert for danger all the time. So your thoughts reflect the physiology. So if a dangerous person walked into your room right now, your body would have already reacted with the thoughts come 1 to 10 seconds later.
So, David, let me stop you for 1 second. In the work that we're doing, many people might have a thought like, my mother ruined my life. Be more specific and work with a thought like that.
Okay, so what happens, the physiology creates the thoughts, but as we become embedded with her thoughts, they also become a perceived threat. So your mother's long gone, she's not right here, but that thought creates that same reaction. Then that reaction creates more thoughts. So you intellectually know, okay, it's illogical to bring my mother into my life today, but it's an established neurological circuit that you can't stop. You have no choice. That circuit is not going away. These are permanent embedded circuits. Your brain, like every living creature, memorizes everything. So that's a memorized permanent thought. So a big part of healing, you could bring healing down to one word, which is awareness. You become aware that this thought is in my brain about my mother. It's not logical. You become aware that this should not be in my brain. So you try to suppress it. Either way, you're in trouble. If you experience a thought, you're in trouble. If you try to suppress it, you're in trouble. So key issue is to use a lot of tools that we're not going to present today. But there's a bunch of ways of calming down the physiology, which is, i.e., anger. We try to get rid of the word anger and anxiety to say activated physiology. Anger is hyperactivated physiology. So as you calm physiology down, then those thoughts start to dissipate. They're still there. But in that space of separating from your thoughts, i.e., mindfulness, expressive writing, not discussing your pain, etc., you create a space. The real healing occurs, and Eileen, you just talked about this, of living your life on your terms, taking full responsibility. So the healing occurs as you engage in the life that you want, period. One of the basic rules, which became apparent about 10 years ago, people talk about their pain all the time. They talk about their mother, they talk about their boss, they talk about their children. Where's your brain? So healing occurs with neuroplasticity going to where you want to go. If you complain, you're reinforcing the same circuits. So cardinal rule is no pain talk, don't discuss your medical care, no criticism, no giving unasked for advice, no gossip, just be nice. Because you're changing the input, then your physiology responds in kind. So you change the input, physiology drops down. So it's a very dynamic physiological process, but the key word is the word awareness.
Mm.
In fact, anger and awareness cannot exist in the same room. Because when you're angry, you're upset about something in the past, you're not even here, you're there. But the other problem with anger, the blood supply to your thinking brain or the neocortex shuts down. You can't even think correctly.
What's interesting is very often when I'm talking to my clients, I always say, if you practice 5 kindnesses a day, you're going to keep the doctor away. The other piece, though, and this is something that Fred does too, is when people are upset, we give them the tool of change the channel. Think of love, think of beauty, think of something that brings you joy, and focus on that. It's the same kind of idea as what you're talking about, David.
It turns out, and Fred and I talk about the terminology quite a bit, but everything in his book is basically processing physiology. So I call it flip the switch. You're not going to do battle with an unconscious brain that has 1 billion bits per second of information compared to your conscious brain. So you look at this and going, okay, I'm in a victim mode. You just flip the switch and move forward, different direction. So instead of entangling yourself with rationalizations and a lot of mental energy, you just go a different direction. Fred also talks about a huge one for me is the unenforceable rules, which is basically a cognitive distortion of should thinking. Be nice if my son cleaned his room, and which is fine to wish to have, but if you in your brain insist on it, get angry when he doesn't, or let's take politics. It'd be nice if politics were different, but if you decide to get angry about something you have no control over, you're totally sabotaging yourself. So that's why, Fred, your book became so powerful in my practice, because the reality is it's very practical and is part of the calm the physiology. And I guess my wish today is to just depersonalize anxiety. It's an alarm signal. Depersonalize anger. It's a gift, keeps you alive. So you learn to live with your stress physiology over here. Again, awareness separates you from your physiology. Instead of fighting with it, you get to watch it take care of you. Then over here, you nurture peace, love, joy, spirituality, good food, good wine, good friends. You're not doing it as a bypass. You're simply putting your brain in a different direction.
I think this is really important information, especially with what's going on in our world today. And we hear news that's depressing. We get fearful about what's going on in the country. And we need to learn how to protect our neurological system.
Right.
And that's why self care becomes so important. And we need to understand and have tools to help us learn how to regulate our nervous system better, which is precisely what I think you're talking about.
Right.
David, two things. One, and I don't think you disagree with this when we've talked about this, but there is an appropriate time when you're injured to be upset and talk about your pain and have it be a full experience. And also there's a time to let that go.
So it's fine to take the piece of paper to expressive writing. It's really critical to feel it. I feel anger every day. You're not going to conquer anger because it's a survival reaction. So it's really critical to feel it. And you can talk about it to your doctor or to your therapist, but you should not discuss your pain with your family, friends, or colleagues ever, because they don't need to hear it. They're not helping you. You want support, but really you're saying, poor me, I'm a victim of this pain. I need your support. It's not their business. They have their own troubles. So that's been a huge rule in healing is actually just use the piece of paper to write about it. Again, talk to a professional, that's fine. And then it's one and done. And it's so challenging. We found this out in the workshops at Omega, that one of the cardinal rules of the workshops is you cannot discuss your pain or pain talk. People would go out behind the buildings to talk about their pain. It's an addiction. And one of the biggest factors in fibromyalgia being a poor prognosis is belonging to a fibromyalgia support group. The reason why it's so deadly, I think, because you're combining negative talk with oxytocin, which is a very powerful socially bonding drug. And we know about the whole, what's the word I want to use, Fred? Pain bonding or...
Remember Carolyn Mace's
Oh, yeah.
woundology.
Woundology, that's the word. So basically, right, Eileen, you do need support, but you need support to live your life and deal with adversity. It's really critical not to look for support because you're in pain.
One other place where I might be a little, not softer, but I would teach people that your drama, your individual story is important, but so is a complete depersonalization. Yes, your partner walked out on you. but that day 50,000 partners walked out on somebody, and both are true, and you run a risk if you exaggerate either side.
Right. Absolutely. But again, it's so hard because people are so used to talking about their pain. It takes at least 6 weeks to stop talking about it.
Mhm.
I didn't realize until Omega Fred that people in pain spend at least 60% of their day complaining, griping, talking about their pain, discussing medical care, going on the internet looking for answers. The problem is if you're focused on fixing the pain, your attention's on the pain and it
Right.
gets reinforced with social interactions. So remember, the healing process occurs by bringing in new data, good food, good wine, good friends, good content, spiritual journey. You're bringing in new data and you're moving towards that data. That's what healing occurs is you're literally restructuring your brain. Because if you're fighting the negativity, I wrote a little website post called Quit Fighting Darkness, just turn on the light.
What's interesting too is, Fred, you and I have talked about this, that when you are able to forgive and go down that route, you're also creating new neural pathways in the brain that weaken the traumatic pathways in the brain. It's a very similar kind of thing as to what you're talking about, David.
You just don't use those pathways as much and they start to atrophy. But it's like playing a musical instrument. I played trumpet in high school. I cannot play it now. But within 6 weeks, I would be pretty good at it if I practiced. But if I picked up a clarinet, I would be helpless. So these circuits are permanent. They're in there. Just depends how much you want to use them. In the process of healing, the focus is on the skills, not the problem. The skill is calm the physiology. The other one is nurturing joy, vulnerability, awareness. The key word, which we don't really have time to go into today, is the word awareness. You become aware, okay, this is survival physiology. Do not have to take that personally. And over here, become aware of what I want and keep pursuing that. So the key word that creates this space to heal is that word awareness.
Mhm.
But
And-
when you're angry, you can't be aware.
And you and I have talked about this. We're both, or all three of us, trying to help people recognize, and it's a tough love tenderness that you do have to give something up to heal. You have to give up victimhood and the secondary gain of being a complainer and having something to blame as to why your life hasn't worked out. And your offering, and I think we offer through our word forgiveness, is focus on your life. Give yourself a life. Don't spend all this energy just talking about what you don't have and how hard it is. But that's not an easy thing for people to heal.
Well, the other problem is as people start letting go of their anger, anger is tough. It's aggressive. I like feeling like a victim, even still. It's powerful. It has dopamine. Giving up the anger allows you to feel more anxiety. I have two people right now who are healing nicely. But what happens is the anger drops, the anxiety increases, and they don't like it. So learning to be with anxiety, i.e. vulnerability, Fred, is a huge part of healing. So that's a learned, trained skill. I also think it's one of the reasons people instinctively don't engage in the healing journey because you got to give up anger, which is dopamine and addicting. You have to feel vulnerable, which are all programmed from a survival standpoint to not feel vulnerable. If you're vulnerable in the wild, you don't survive. With humans, if you're vulnerable mentally or emotionally, it's the same thing. Your mental pain is a bigger problem than physical pain. If you have your feelings hurt, it's the same thing as a physical wound. So it's a tricky deal to convince people to let go of their anger and to move into joy because you feel more anxiety.
Are you feeling more anxiety because you're feeling more vulnerable?
Well, to me, it's the same word, right? Feeling vulnerable, feeling anxious, you're not sure of the outcome, and you have to let go of the outcome and watch it happen. I also call the dog journey the journey to nowhere because all you're doing is right this second. This is it. So you get to be with what is anxiety, anger, good stuff, bad stuff. So it's really critical to allow yourself to feel the anger, allow yourself to feel anxiety, which is hard. So they're both equally as hard. So anger is always the tipping point, my experience included. All my symptoms disappeared within a year after processing anger. So it's true with every patient that heals, it's always anger is the threshold. It's not the final solution, but if you don't get past that threshold, you can't get to what you want.
We're almost out of time, but I'd like to ask you one more question. What would you like to leave the audience with today?
So I haven't got a chance to talk to Fred about this as much as I would like, but my new book, Calm Your Body, Heal Your Mind, is as you calm down the physiology, the thoughts drop down dramatically. And it represents the last 3 years or 4 years of my neuroscience roundtable. And it's a whole different energy. I think it represents a new era of mental health. We'll look at the ruts as the driving force, not psychological diagnoses. And again, ruts are solvable. In the mental health world, they're sort of considered to be managed. But I quit my practice because I witnessed this deep healing over and over and over again. So the book is Calm Your Body, Heal Your Mind. It'll be on the bookshelves Tuesday this week. But I also have a course called the DOC Journey, which is a sequential course that takes you through the steps you need to do to heal. It's at the docjourney.com, direct your own care. And it takes about 3 to 6 months, maybe 10 to 20 minutes a day of just learning, repetition. And some people heal quickly. Some people takes a while. There is a number of people that I don't have the answer for yet. In other words, when you're angry and your brain shut down, how do you break in the window? So that's the part that's challenging. But the only factor I think that predicts healing is your willingness to engage. It's one of those things where the reason why I wrote these books, because I could not explain it in clinic, and it's about 90% self-directed. You don't need a psychologist or psychiatrist, except if you have it on board, things move much faster. You can do it without, but I'm always looking for coaches and psychologists to help people along. But what it does gives people the framework to heal, then your job becomes much easier because you just help them along the pathway.
Thank you for these resources. I'm going to go out and get your book on June 1st. That's for sure. I think we all need it. So, David, if people wanted to get in touch with you, what would be the best way for them to do that?
A website called backincontrol.com, one word, BACKincontrol.com. My personal email is there, and I answer my emails. So that's the easiest way, just my website and my email, and I'm happy to talk to people. One of my fellows in clinic asked me one day, he says, "Don't you ever get tired of talking?" And I go, "No, not really." I just got a letter today from a kid in Greece who has horrible intrusive thought patterns for years to the point he was housebound. And he just wrote me the nicest letter today that not only has his life changed, but talking to his father's life has changed. And again, it's not magic from David Hanscom. These are just universal concept. Everybody wants to feel safe. And when you're angry, nobody around me feels safe. I don't feel safe. So as you learn to be vulnerable and to learn to feel safe, people heal. So it's been exciting to watch.
Thank you so much. It's been really a pleasure having you as a guest on this podcast. I know that our listeners are going to appreciate the information you've shared, and you're really helping so many people. So thank you very much.
I'm excited to hear. Fred, it's always nice to talk to you. I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
It is, David.
Thank you for joining us in listening to Voices of Peace, Personal Forgiveness, where I hope you were inspired by the stories you heard about those practicing forgiveness in their daily lives and how this can help create social change. If you know of anyone who would benefit from hearing this episode, please share it. I would also like to remind my listeners that I'm available for forgiveness coaching. In this coaching program, you will learn why it is important to forgive, how to forgive, and how to let go of anger, pain, and grievances you may be holding on to. You will also learn how to live your life with more compassion towards yourself and others, leading to a happier and more peaceful existence. Contact me at erboris@gmail.com for forgiveness coaching sessions. For more information on forgiveness and political forgiveness, visit my website, drboris.com, where you can find the latest information and sign up for the newsletter. And please remember to like and subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.